Today I'm going to do my second ever auto sax recorking, courtesy of a man providing me with all the tools that we needed for a meagre £7 off eBay, Jamie Clark from the United States of America. I'm going to post the link in the description. So he sends an envelope. Inside we actually get 2 sets of cork all ready to go, so we can do 2 hole corkings somewhere down the line. We also get some sandpaper, the cork that we're actually going to be using today, and a little single-sided razor to be able to cut the cork. Now I've already gone to the effort of cutting the cork to the length that I want it actually on the neck of the saxophone. Coincidentally that size is virtually exactly the same length as the razor, which allows you to obviously just do one cut and have it all ready and waiting to go. So this is giving you a little bit of a rough idea as to how it's all going to work. You might have spotted the X on the underside of the cork. That's the side of the cork which is going to be coming into contact with the neck of the saxophone itself. We're obviously going to need to be doing a bit of trimming. We've also cleaned the neck of the saxophone from any previous adhesive from the last set of cork, rubbed it down, given it a thorough cleaning. Occasionally, if there was some grime really hard on there, using a scalpel, but mainly using this stuff. Sticky stuff remover. It's very good, it doesn't damage lacquer, doesn't cause any tarnish, and it allows us to remove some of the adhesive or some of the glue that was there previously and have a nice, fresh, new surface to work with. Okay, let's get a move on. The first thing we're just going to briefly talk about is this chamfered edge on the cork, which is the edge that goes down first. It has 2 very small crosses which have been penned in on that chamfer. You might be able to see it. And this is the glue we're going to use. It's impact adhesive. It works on virtually every single material and surface you could possibly imagine. It is an instant bind. It must be used carefully, but it retails in the UK for around £4. I'm gonna plead with you on one little thing today, guys. Please take your octave mechanism off the neck. It's not hard. I'm using the reverse side of a scalpel edge, the blunt edge, and that fits into the screw just nicely. Obviously you turn it anti-clockwise, it's going to reach a point where the thread actually runs out and you're on a pure shaft, at which point, as you'll see very soon once this is unscrewed, then we take a safety pin, we come around the other side of the screw and we just push it through, and that releases the octave mechanism from the neck. At the end of the day, we're going to be wanting to apply a little bit of pressure to make sure that this actually adheres to the neck properly. You don't want to have that octave mechanism just getting in the way. You don't want to damage it, otherwise you're just going to have to go out and buy a new neck anyway. Don't forget to, once the pin's out, just pop it back in the octave mechanism again and then set it off to one side, because if you leave it loose, it's pretty much guaranteed that you're going to lose it and then you're never going to get it back again, and you're going to have to come up with some sort of DIY solution to be able to get a new pin. At the same time, I like to tighten up the little recoil spring that's inside the octave mechanism, that obviously once the octave key is released, it depresses the pad back down. It's good to tighten that up. It can get a little bit loose and slide off to one side sometimes when you're actually playing. Protect your neck, alright? Once you've established the length that your cork is going to be down the shaft of the neck, find that line and apply some masking tape to the lacquer below it. You don't want any of that impact glue just spilling out onto the lacquer that's going to be showing, because it ain't going to come off. And if it does come off, it's going to come off with force and probably take the lacquer with it. So apply a couple of layers of masking tape just to be on the safe side. Now you can see there's quite a substantial amount of leftover cork. I like to remove some of this because it just gets in the way before we even glue. So I mark it up with the back end of the scalpel, then I find that line, and then I just cut it off with the razor. It's good to have a little bit of extra cork there, something to grip onto to really pull it taut as both sides are coming together, the cork and the neck. Having too much, it just gets in the way. It makes the whole situation a little bit of a pain. You're fumbling around, your fingers are going everywhere. Just trim it off. It's probably a good time to talk to you about how Evo-Stick impact glue actually works. You apply one layer to the cork, another layer to the neck, and they bind together, 2 layers of glue. So we're putting some onto the cork first, and then we're going to allow that to dry. It has a semi-dry, tacky stage of around 5 to 10 minutes After 10 minutes, that's when you want to start applying it. So I'm just using a lollipop stick to push it around the cork, make sure it's worked right up into the edges. You don't want to apply the cork and then find that it's actually coming loose around the edges or it's flapping up. It's just, you might as well go the whole way, and you might as well just be incredibly anal about it, because you're only going to get one shot at the end of the day. Only going to get one shot. As a reminder again, you can see that this is on the side with the X. Now, if you've bought your own cork, just remind yourself to actually put an X on one side so you know which side is going to be glued and come into contact with the neck. Sounds obvious, but the damn thing looks the same on both sides, so just use a little bit of initiative. Now what's necessary is to glue up that 45-degree chamfer, or cut, whatever you want to call it. I just put a small dab of glue onto the lollipop stick, and then I run that along that edge. Again, you can see those two small X's, which is obviously, it denotes not only the side that you need to glue up, but also that this is the first edge that actually comes down onto the neck of the saxophone. These little reminders, they just help you out, stop you making a mistake. Fortunately, I was doing this outside, so I could allow this to dry in a reasonably good humidity. Keep it in the shade, keep a look at the time, because while that's drying, you're going to be gluing up the saxophone neck. Don't leave it for so long that it actually does start to dry out before you can actually put these two halves together, the neck and the cork. If there's one thing to say when doing this, it's pretty much the same as gluing up the cork, but don't actually go right to the edge of the masking tape, because you're going to glue the masking tape down to your saxophone neck. Just a bit of common sense, but it's worth noting, because I had to remind myself not to go right up to it. Left probably about 2mm. Again, I just wipe over it with a tissue. Any fingerprints off there, oil, just remove them so you've got a nice fresh start, something clean for the glue to stick to. And same as before, glue it up, place it in the shade, and leave it for 5 to 10 minutes. Go and get yourself a cup of tea or a drink. When it comes to gluing up the saxophone neck, or whichever one you're going to do second, try not to take your time. Try to go as quickly as possible, because you do need to factor in the fact that the other half is drying, and you don't want it to become too over dry, otherwise these two halves aren't going to cement together. So this is it. It's going to be a bit daunting, because as soon as they touch, contact will be made and they will stick permanently. Be delicate as you apply it. Make sure the cork is lined up with the edge of the saxophone, if you don't plan on cutting any off the end. Make sure it's parallel to the neck of the saxophone, it's not skewed off at an angle. And then apply it. Make sure that first few millimeters is really stuck down, so that if you do apply some force by pulling it, it's not going to come off. And then just keep pulling that cork taut as you move it around the neck, keeping a lot of tension on there to make sure that you're not left with any dead space. Any little areas. As you do it, you may want to push any air bubbles out from the middle outwards toward the edge of the cork. That can happen. And also be forceful with the cork, because the neck of the saxophone is slightly tapered. It's going to want to not to sit completely round. It's going to want to skew off. Be a bit forceful with it. Pull it tight. Pull it right to the edge of the saxophone neck, on the mouthpiece end, of course, and it should be good. It should be good. It's not as daunting as you would think. Once that's done, maybe you've given the cork a little bit of a massage just to make sure that it's really firmly fixed in place. You can cut off that excess. Again, find a place that is suitable to cut it off. Don't cut it off before that chamfered 45-degree edge, because once you're sanded, they're going to meet. So cut just after it. Just remember, any excess material you can sand away, but you can't bring it back if you cut it off. So just err on the side of caution. I do wish I had a camera that did have a little bit of a better macro function to be able to show you this a little more close up. By the end of it, you will see how the cork does actually sit together. Right, it's time to sand. We've got the sanding strip. The cork at the minute, it's not perfectly round. So our aim here is to get it more round so that we have a nice snug fit with the mouthpiece. Get your favourite mouthpiece out that you use the most, because that's the one that you're going to be putting on the cork. This is a metal mouthpiece made in England. I forget the name of the maker. It's quite old. So we're just going to begin the process of sanding. I'm going to speed this whole thing up so you can get an idea of, you know, it's sanding. It's not rocket science. There's not really much for me to explain. The point is, don't over sand. At regular intervals, get your mouthpiece back in and see if it fits. As soon as it gets on there, as soon as it's on the cork, you're now beginning the tedious process of being a bit lighter with the sanding and finding that point where the mouthpiece has a nice snug fit onto the cork, but not that it's too loose that you can push it right to the end, because the actual act of keeping your mouthpiece on the cork, maybe overnight or for a few days, is going to compress it into that shape that is adapting to the inner dimensions and the inner diameter of your mouthpiece. Chamfer the edge down where the mouthpiece actually goes onto the neck. The last thing you want to have is cork on that near edge that basically has corners, because there's a greater chance that as you push the mouthpiece on, it's going to start to tear or rip up that cork. Really chamfer it down on this edge, and you're going to find that the mouthpiece not only slips on a little easier, but generally that cork is going to last longer. I've found that the most wear does happen on that near edge, because that's where a lot of the immediate pressure is applied with the mouthpiece. Well, that's enough sanding. In real time, it probably took 15 minutes. It's not going to take hours. As you can see, although it is sort of out of shot, I am really working to get that mouthpiece on there. A few small extras, and we're good to go. Just remember that because the neck does taper, you don't want to be sanding your cork to fit that taper. You want it to be flat all the way down, because obviously if the taper's still there, then the mouthpiece is going to be even harder as you move down the cork. Well, we're all done. We're all done. I mean, there may be some additional work here on the back end. There is a slight taper, as you can see, toward the back end of the neck. But on the whole, it's a good finish. The seam has come up nicely. It's come up rather tight. We've got that chamfer on the edge to allow the mouthpiece to slip over. And it really isn't rocket science, guys. You can see when the mouthpiece goes on, it is tight. That's how we want it. Don't forget, there's no cork grease on this yet, which is, of course, an essential for any sax player to have cork grease at hand to be able to get your mouthpiece where you need it to be in tune on the neck. Two final thoughts. The first one is, as soon as you've finished up with all of this, you're going to need to just gently blow through the neck to remove any dust and debris, and blow through the octave hole as well. That's very important. You don't want anything clogging that up. Reassemble your mouthpiece, and then you're pretty much good to go. The suggestion is that you apply cork grease every day for a week, and on that first night, roll your mouthpiece down onto the cork after applying some cork grease, go onto an online tuner, and get yourself in tune. Then leave it there all night long. The cork will settle down, it will mould to the shape of your mouthpiece, and you will be left with an indent to not only where it's in pitch, but also where the mouthpiece sits comfortably and it's not going to move and slide around, and you can use that for future reference. So thanks for watching, and thanks to Jamie Clark for putting this incredible product up on eBay for a really affordable price. I hope this has demystified the whole act of recorking for a lot of beginner sax players. I hope it's made it much easier for you, and I really do hope that I've made this video as concise and as straightforward and as easy to follow as possible. So thanks for watching.